You solved something today that nobody else could solve. On the drive home, you started typing it out to someone. Then you deleted it and sent something about dinner instead. Nothing happened. Technically, and here's the part almost nobody says out loud, you didn't stay quiet because you don't need to be seen. You stayed quiet because somewhere along the way, being seen started to feel like it cost somebody something. You learned that a lot earlier than you think. I'm Daniel Rivera. I'm 56, I'm Gen X, and what I do here is take a behavior we all recognize and go looking for where it actually started. If that sounds useful, subscribe, but decide in 10 minutes, not now. So let's go back to the kitchen. You came in through the side door, you put the keys in the same place you've put them for 11 years. You ate standing up, over the sink or over the counter, because sitting down would have made it a meal, and a meal would have taken a commitment you didn't have in you. And the whole time there was a sentence in your mouth that never made it out. Something like, today I did something that took 25 years of experience, and nobody in that building could have done it. You didn't say it, not because you're humble. You've met humble people, and that's not what this is. Here's the contradiction I want to sit inside of for the next few minutes. You will tell anyone who asks that you don't need recognition. You'll say it flatly, almost with pride, and you'll mean it. But if I asked you right now to name the person who never said thank you, you'd have the name before I finished the question. You'd have the year. You'd probably have the room. That's not indifference. Indifference doesn't keep records, so the question isn't whether you want to be recognized. Something in you is still keeping a ledger, and it's been keeping it accurately for decades. The question is why you stopped submitting the invoice. And the answer to that is older than your career, older than your marriage, older than most of what you'd point to if I asked you to explain yourself. Let me build it in 3 pieces, and I'll be honest about which pieces apply to everybody and which ones don't. The first piece is generational, and it's not cultural at all. If you were born between roughly 1965 and 1980, you grew up in the last stretch of American life before praise became a parenting strategy. Nobody was tracking your emotional development. Nobody said I'm proud of you on a Tuesday for no reason. The system was simpler. Silence meant fine. Silence meant nothing was on fire, nobody had called the house. You were handling it. Attention was a resource that flowed toward problems. If you weren't a problem, you didn't get attention. And that wasn't cruelty, that was triage. I want you to picture a specific object, because this is where it gets concrete. The report card. Not a bad one. A good one. You brought it to the kitchen table and set it down, and an adult picked it up, looked at it for maybe 4 seconds, said good, and put it back down next to the stack of mail they were sorting. 4 seconds. And then the sound of envelopes. That's the whole scene. Nothing happened to you, nobody hurt you. But you learned something in those 4 seconds that you have never once unlearned. Good news is not an event. Good news is the absence of bad news. Good news does not require a response. And then a few years later, you watch the world change the rules. Trophies for showing up, certificates for participation, a whole vocabulary of encouragement that arrived about 15 minutes after you aged out of eligibility for it. Now, there's a channel at work where people post shout-outs with confetti emojis, and somebody once posted one about you, and you felt something you couldn't name that was about 40% embarrassment and 60% something a lot worse. That's the layer everybody in this generation shares. Now the second one, and this one doesn't apply to everyone watching. If you grew up in a house where praise flowed freely and got said out loud, this next part isn't yours. Let it pass. But if it is yours, it might be the bigger of the two. In a lot of Latino households, and I'm not going to pretend this is every Latino household because it isn't, praise ran on a different currency entirely. Love was not something you announced. Love was something you delivered. It was the plate left in the oven with a dish towel over it because you got home late. It was somebody driving 40 minutes each way twice without discussing it. It was a person taking a shift they didn't want, so a bill got paid before it became a phone call. That was the language. It was fluent, it was constant, and it almost never used words. And here's why that matters for you specifically. When love is expressed through sacrifice, the yardstick for whether you're doing enough stops being your effort and becomes somebody else's suffering. So you do something genuinely hard, and the honest response from an adult who loved you was some version of course you did. Do you know what I did at your age? Do you know what your grandmother did? That's not an insult. In its own way, that's a love letter. It's saying you're standing on something. But the effect on a 15-year-old is very specific. You learn that your accomplishment is not the top of a mountain. It's the floor somebody else built for you at great personal cost. And you don't get applause for standing on a floor. There's also the simplest explanation, and it's the one people skip because it isn't dramatic. A person who never received applause in their entire life does not have applause to hand out. Not withholding it, just doesn't own any. You can't distribute a currency you were never issued. Now the third piece, and this one's even narrower, so same deal. If it's not you, let it go by. But if it is, this is probably the one doing the most work. Some of you were the reliable one. Not the oldest necessarily, not the favorite. The one who was fine. There may have been a sibling who needed more, health, trouble, school, temperament, something. Or an adult working 2 jobs, or a stretch of years where the household had exactly enough attention for whatever was actively on fire. And you were not on fire, so you got left alone. And here's the thing nobody tells you about being left alone as a kid. It feels like a job. Your competence became your contribution. Being okay was how you helped. And when you did something well, watch what actually came back. Not praise, more responsibility. You handled the paperwork once, so now it's your paperwork. You were good with the younger one, so now that's yours too. You figured out the insurance thing, the school thing, the landlord thing. Every time you performed, the reward was a larger assignment. Which teaches a lesson so efficient it's almost elegant. Visibility is not a prize. Visibility is a workload. So you got good at doing the thing and then getting out of the room. Now, and this is important because I don't want to spend the next 10 minutes describing what's wrong with you. I want to be very clear about what that built, because it's not small and it's not a wound. You have something most people don't have and can't fake. You have an internal standard. You know whether the work was good before anyone tells you, and they're telling you doesn't change your assessment. Do you understand how rare that is? Most people are weather vanes. Praise moves them, criticism moves them, and they spend enormous energy adjusting to the temperature of the room. You don't do that. You can work for years, with 0 external fuel. You can be overlooked in a meeting and it doesn't touch the quality of what you produce that afternoon. That makes you almost impossible to manipulate. Flattery bounces off you. You've watched people get talked into terrible decisions because someone told them they were special and you sat there thinking, that's it? That's the price? You can't be bought with a nice word, and there is real strength in that. It's also, frankly, why people trust you with things they don't trust anyone else with. Nobody hands the difficult problem to the person who needs constant reassurance. So this isn't a defect, it's a skill. It worked. It kept you standing during years when nothing else would have. Which brings us to the part nobody warns you about, that a strategy can keep working perfectly while quietly starting to charge interest. Nobody sends you a notice. There's no letter that says the terms have changed. There are 3 costs here, and they don't show up together. They arrive in order, and the third one is the actual reason I'm making this video. The first cost you can verify in about 30 seconds, and you already know what it is. You cannot receive. Somebody says something good about you, and there's a timer that starts. 4 seconds, maybe 5. And in that window, you will deflect it. You'll credit the team. You'll point out the part that didn't go well. You'll make a joke. You'll say it was nothing, which is a strange thing to say about something that took you a decade to learn how to do. And here's the mechanical consequence, which is the part people miss. The offers stop coming. Not because anyone decided you don't deserve them, because handing something to a person who won't take it is awkward, and human beings only do awkward things a limited number of times. Your family stopped saying it. Your colleagues stopped saying it. Then, at some point, you concluded that nobody notices. But that's not what happened. They noticed, they extended it, you didn't take it, and they got tired of standing there with their arm out. Second cost, and this one's less comfortable, so stay with me, because I'm not saying it to be clever. You say it doesn't matter, but you're counting. You know exactly which promotion went to which person and what year. You know who never said thank you after the thing you did in 2019 that took 6 weeks of your life. You have a ledger, and it is meticulous, and you would deny its existence under oath. That's the easy half. Here's the harder half. Somewhere along the way, you became a person who also doesn't give it. Think about that honestly. Your kid does something well, and what comes out of your mouth is a note about the part that could be better. Somebody on your team does solid work, and you think that's the job, and you move on. The exact sentence that was said over your head at that kitchen table. You have called this having standards. You've maybe even been a little proud of it. Not everybody gets a parade for doing what they're supposed to do. But the truth is, you're not enforcing a standard. You're passing along a shortage. You received a currency you couldn't use, and you decided the currency was worthless. And then you raised people and managed people inside that decision. And some of them are going to be 55 one day, eating standing up in a kitchen, wondering why they can't take a compliment. I'm not saying that to make you feel bad. I'm saying it because it's the only version of this that's actually true, and you've never had much patience for the flattering version of anything. Third cost. This is the one that's tied to time, and it's the reason the number on your birthday matters here. At 25, not asking to be seen costs you nothing. There's an entire lifetime of witnesses still ahead. At 55, the audience is shrinking. The adults who would have known what your work actually cost, some of them are gone. Some of them are old enough now that the conversation isn't available anymore. The manager who watched you carry the department through the bad year retired and doesn't think about it. The company reorganized, and the institutional memory of what you did evaporated in a single afternoon when the shared drive got migrated. Your kids are adults with their own lives, and they know you as the person who handled things, because that's the only version of you they were ever shown. And a lot of what you did was structurally invisible to begin with. In the 2025 National Caregiving Study from AARP and the National Alliance for Caregiving, and this next figure is about Latino caregivers of all ages, not our generation specifically, so I'm not going to stretch it into something it isn't. Well over 40% of Latino caregivers are also raising children under 18 at the same time. 2 directions at once. And there is no line item for that. There's no performance review for the years you spent coordinating somebody's medications while helping with a college application. Nobody logs it. You don't even call yourself a caregiver. You'd say you were just being a decent son, a decent daughter, whatever the word is in your family. Meanwhile, in the working world, the EEOC's own review of age discrimination found that workers over 45 report experiencing or perceiving age bias at rates that are hard to wave away, which means the outside world is quietly discounting your record at the exact moment you'd finally be willing to point at it. So, here's the arithmetic. You spent decades building something enormous. You deliberately kept no witnesses, and the few witnesses that existed are aging out. If you never learned how to say out loud what you did, then nobody will be able to say it for you. Not because they don't love you, because they genuinely do not know. Now let me tell you what I actually think is happening here, because I think everyone, including you, has been reading this wrong for about 40 years. The story you've been told about yourself, and the one you probably half believe, is that you're cold, guarded, bad at receiving. That somewhere in there, you decided you weren't worth much, and the deflecting is just proof. I don't think that's it. I've watched this pattern up close in enough people to be reasonably sure of the shape of it. Go back to that house. The one where an adult was tired in a way children aren't supposed to be able to detect, but always can. Where the money situation was a weather system you learned to read off of faces. Where somebody was already carrying the absolute limit of what they could carry. You did not stop asking to be seen because you thought you were worthless. You stopped asking because in that house, asking would have added weight. Wanting something from a person who has nothing left is a kind of violence when you're 8 years old and you love them. So you took your own needs, and you made them smaller and smaller until they could fit in a place where they wouldn't cost anyone anything. And then you did it so consistently for so long that the muscle stopped being a choice and became a reflex. That's not coldness. That is the most protective thing a child can do for the adults they love. You were being careful with people. You've just been doing it for 40 years in rooms where nobody needed you to be that careful anymore. And to everyone standing in those rooms, it has looked like distance. So, what do you do with that? And here's where I'm supposed to give you a program, and I'm not going to, because you'd recognize a program and close the tab, and you'd be right to. One thing, pick one. Either the next time someone hands you a compliment, you let the 4 seconds pass without doing anything with it. You say thank you and you stop talking. That's the whole exercise. And it will feel physically strange, like holding a door open with your foot. Or, and this one might matter more, you find the person in your life who is currently doing the invisible version of what you did. The one who's fine. The one nobody's worried about. And you say the specific sentence. Not proud of you. Something with detail in it, something that proves you saw the actual work. I know what it took to handle that, and I know nobody said anything. And if you decide you don't want to do either, that's a real answer, and I'm not going to talk you out of it. Some of you have made peace with this, and the peace is genuine. Just make sure it's a decision you're making at 55, and not one that was made for you at 9 by a kid trying to keep the house calm. Because that's the only thing that actually changes here. Not the behavior, the authorship. Now go back to that kitchen. You're still standing up. The keys are still in the same place. The message is still deleted, and honestly, tomorrow you'll probably delete it again. I'm not going to pretend one video rewires 40 years. But you know what's happening in that room now. You know that the silence isn't proof you don't care about being seen. It's the oldest, most careful thing you ever learned how to do, still running long after the emergency that installed it ended. That's the difference. Same kitchen, same sink, same deleted message. You're just no longer confused about what it is. And I want to know when it started for you. Not how you feel about it, the moment. The first time you did something you were proud of and something in you decided not to mention it. How old were you? Where were you standing? And what happened right before? Some of you have a specific memory with a room and a smell attached to it, and some of you don't, because it didn't arrive as an event. It accumulated. That's an answer too, and I want that one as well. I read the comments, and they decide what I make next. Which brings me to the thing I keep circling. Because there's a second version of this, and it's not the same as not being able to take a compliment. It's standing in the aisle of a hardware store looking for something for 20 minutes with an employee in a vest 10 feet away, and walking the aisle a third time rather than asking. Same generation, same house, different muscle. Not the inability to receive praise, but the inability to ask for help, which costs a lot more and shows up a lot later. We're going to have to talk about that one.